and welcome. So I have my reading journal and my hot tea, and I'm just going to go through quickly the books that I read in January, really focusing on my favorite. So I read 2 Heather Fawcett books this month. I'm going to give a little bit more in-depth review on them. I also read Upon a Frosted Star by M.A. Kuzniar. This is a 1920s Swan Lake retelling. I read Gilead by Marilynne Robinson. It's an epistolary format, kind of journaling of a letter that an elderly pastor is writing to his son as he knows that he is dying. And it's basically the story of his life. The next, I read The Reckless Way of Love by Dorothy Day. Dorothy Day is someone who was an activist. She was actually part of the Night of Terror where they arrested suffragettes and put them in Occoquan jail, and apparently it was very cruel. She became a Catholic. She started Houses of Hospitality, a huge movement, and is really working in life much as a saint would. I also read The Dark is Rising by Susan Cooper. This is a middle grade fantasy series. I read it close to Christmas because the first one, basically in the series, is set around Christmas season. I'm hoping to share more about it. It is definitely high fantasy. The first book got a Newbery Honor Award, and I think one of the later ones got a Newbery Award. But it was written, I think, in the 60s, and so it definitely has that 60s fantasy flair. Speaking of fantasy, I also read The Princess Bride by William Goldman. This I am reading for a Cozy Reader book club that I am co-hosting. If anyone's interested in joining, just let me know. We just meet over Zoom once a month, and we chose The Princess Bride for the month of February. I started it and really enjoyed it so much that I finished it already. So I am excited to talk about that in the book club, but it very much resembles the movie. It has that kind of slapstick humor. This was written in the 70s, and it very much feels like a 1970s fantasy flair as well. I also read 2 Rebecca Ross books. I read Dreams Lie Beneath, which is a standalone fantasy about magicians that battle during the night based on what the villagers dreamed. And I love Rebecca Ross's writing. I hope to do a whole video about it. I have 1 more of her books to read, and then I'm going to share them. I love them so much. So the next Rebecca Ross book that I read was The Queen's Resistance. This was the second part of her debut duology. It really does a great job of focusing on the peril and the saving of the day, while also this quiet whispering of romance is steadily making its way threading through the plot as well. I am going to share about the 2 Heather Fawcett books that I read this month that I loved. So I started the year out with Ember and the Ice Dragons. This is a middle grade book. It's one of the reasons why I love Heather Fawcett so much is that she writes middle grade as well as adult books. I love the themes in this of found family and adventure and redemption and also ancient dragons. So we follow Ember, who is a girl who has been transformed from a dragon by a stormancer, which is basically a sanctioned magician in this form of England, which is similar to our world, but obviously has dragons and magicians. She has a problem in London, where she's living with her adopted father, who's the stormancer who transformed her, of getting hot, and she just kind of like bursts into flames, and things around her are burning. And so she and her adopted father decide that she would be better off going down to Antarctica, where the temperature is colder. And as someone who has hot flashes and really prefers colder months at this point, I can completely relate to that. But when she gets there, she discovers that her aunt is probably hiding something, and there is actually a lot of danger in that area, specifically towards dragons. There is a pretty heavy theme in here of being anti-hunting, and so just be aware of that. But I loved this cold, wintry setting so much. So the next Heather Fawcett book that I read this month is Emily Wilde and the Map of the Otherlands. This is the second book in the Emily Wilde series. So the first one is Emily Wilde and the Encyclopedia of Fairies. This one is The Map of the Otherlands. I don't think I can spoil too much in this series by giving you a synopsis and a review specifically of the Map of the Otherlands. So in this, we follow Emily Wilde, of course. We find her in this book back in this academic setting. It felt more academic than the first one did. And so she's back at her university. Wendell Bambleby, who is a fellow professor, kind of mentor, is also back at school, and they are continuing to help Wendell with searching for a way back to his family of origin. That's really kind of her main focus and main goal throughout the book. It turns out that it's very actually intense. Almost right from the beginning, you're getting clues. They're actually under attack because apparently his family of origin does not want him to return. The thing that I loved about this book is Emily in this book seems a little reticent to assert herself. So she has a very brusque personality. She's very matter of fact. She dispenses with small talk. She gets right to the point. And that can be off-putting to the people that are kind of in her life and around her. But in this book, while she still has that brusqueness, we really get a better feel of Emily's personality, in my opinion, and she actually does seem to be softening. The characters that we have, as I mentioned, are Emily and Wendell. We also have her niece, who is Ariadne. We also have a fellow professor who joins them in this quest. And it really is this continuing theme that Heather Fawcett has in this series of them kind of being secluded in a separate village, in a cold setting, in a cottage, as Emily is kind of exploring the general area for specific purposes. And so in that sense, these are both very similar. But again, I think there is more depth into Emily's character. There is not as much depth into Wendell's character, and so I'm hoping that in the third book, we really delve into him. He continues to be kind of this anomaly. Emily understands him. He seems to be getting more and more accepted by people around him, but we still don't fully understand his personality in depth. He still comes off as being a little bit superficial. So I'm hoping for a bit more of Wendell kind of showing that he is worth Emily's attention, I guess. So I loved that we had little connections with the first book. We had a return of Shadow. Shadow had a much bigger role, I felt. And we also had the return of Poe and Emily still maintaining contact with the people in the village from the first book, albeit not a main plot point. It was just still nice to see her maintaining connections and realizing that she's discovering the importance of them. And so I love Heather Fawcett's writing. I'm slowly making my way through all of her work, but this series of Emily Wilde is by far my favorite. I love the cold setting. I love the friendship between Wendell and Emily, and I love all of the side characters and what they bring to the plot and to the lives of Emily and Wendell. And so if you haven't started this series, I would highly recommend, obviously, starting with the Encyclopedia of Fairies. You should read them in order, but this is absolutely worth your time. A lot of times for me, it's rare to find two books in a series that I find equally enjoyable, and I find them equally enjoyable. I would love to hear what you read in January and what your favorite book is, and let me know if you have started the Emily Wilde series and what you think of it. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time.